It's hard to introduce a man that has done so many things. Businessman, presenter, dad, and of course born mechanic. But Ant, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Good morning, Mr. Anstead.
Show 1, Episode 1, Master Mechanic, marker.
Here we go. It's been a crazy year of wheeler dealers. We've never done that many cars, ever. The production's come to an end and it feels like it's the right time to take some time off.
Behind the cars and cameras, Ant Anstead was quietly going through one of the darkest periods of his life. His marriage was falling apart. He had lost more than 20 pounds. And his final days on Wheeler Dealers were unfolding while he was struggling in ways viewers could not see. He would later admit just how low he had become, making his decision to leave the show look very different in hindsight. So, what was really happening behind the scenes? And how much did that difficult period have to do with Ant walking away from Wheeler Dealers? Join us as we uncover the story behind his exit. Everything fell apart. On November 2nd, 2020, Ant announced that he was leaving Wheeler Dealers. The explanation seemed simple enough. Production was moving back to England, while Ant had built a life in California and had other television projects lined up. He said he was happy to hand the tools over to Mark Priestley and move on to what came next. From the outside, it looked like a normal career decision, the kind where everyone shakes hands, says nice things, and goes their separate ways. But Ant's life around that time was anything but simple, and the timing of his exit made the story much more complicated. The timing made Ant's exit feel very different from a simple career move. About 6 weeks earlier, Christina Anstead had announced that they were separating, less than 2 years after they got married and only a year after their son Hudson was born. Then came the news that Ant was leaving Wheeler Dealers. In the space of just a couple of months, his marriage had fallen apart, and one of the biggest jobs in his life was ending too. The show moving back to the United Kingdom was a real reason for his departure. But behind that announcement was a man going through what he would later describe as one of the hardest periods of his life. A few weeks after Ant announced he was leaving Wheeler Dealers, fans started noticing that he looked much thinner in his Instagram photos. When someone mentioned it, Ant admitted he had lost 23 pounds, then joked about putting the weight back on with donuts, pizza, and burgers. But the weight loss was connected to something much more serious. Ant later told people that the breakup had hit him incredibly hard, affecting his sleep, his appetite, and his stress levels. For a while, he said he was in a very dark place. And suddenly the change fans had been noticing in those photos made a lot more sense. What really showed how badly the breakup affected Ant was what he did afterward. He joined a 35-day online breakup recovery course, which he later described as a lifeline, and also went on a 3-day retreat focused on faith, fitness, and mental health. Ant eventually realized he had 2 choices: stay stuck in a very difficult place, or start focusing on the good things he still had in his life. He chose to move forward, but it clearly took work. So while his Wheeler Dealers exit may have officially been about the show moving back to Britain, Ant was also trying to put his personal life back together at the same time. So if the exit itself was genuinely just about scheduling, why did it come wrapped in so much unspoken pain? The official reason and the real story turn out to be 2 very different things. The whole picture. To be fair to Ant, nobody involved with Wheeler Dealers has ever disputed the relocation story, and there is no evidence that his exit was some kind of secret firing or falling out with Mike Brewer. The show's producers moved the entire operation back to its original home base at Bicester Heritage in England. And staying on as a regular would have meant Ant either commuting across an ocean or moving his young son away from the life he had just built in Southern California. Mike Brewer and Mark Priestley both went out of their way to say there were no hard feelings and Ant continued to make the occasional guest appearance on the show afterward, which is not typically how you treat someone you pushed out over conflict. So the practical explanation holds up. What does not hold up is the idea that Ant was simply making a clean, uncomplicated career decision at a moment when his marriage was collapsing and his mental health was clearly suffering. He was managing two separate crises at once, a personal one and a professional one, and he chose to present only the professional one to the public because, as he put it himself, he does not like sharing private matters. The Wheeler Dealer's exit gave him a tidy, socially acceptable story to tell while the much messier story was unfolding underneath it. Ant's exit makes more sense when looking at everything happening in his life at the time, but it also raises another question about why losing Wheeler Dealers mattered so much to him. So who was Ant before American television, Christina, and all the attention that came with them? Before America ever knew his name. Part of what made 2020 sting so much is that Ant had spent well over a decade building toward the career he was suddenly watching unravel. He grew up in Plymouth, on the southern coast of England, and long before television ever entered the picture, he was working as a car designer and builder, the kind of hands-on craftsman who could actually fabricate a vehicle rather than just talk about one on camera. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should, because British car television has never been short on charming hosts who can banter about horsepower. What it has always been short on is hosts who can climb under a car and do the mechanical work themselves, and that was Ant's actual selling point from the beginning. His first real marriage to Louise Herbert lasted from 2005 to 2017 and produced his two oldest children, Amelie and Archie, both of whom stayed in the UK with their mother after that divorce. Around that same period, Ant landed the gig that first put him on British screens in a meaningful way, co-hosting For the Love of Cars alongside actor Philip Glenister, a show built around restoring classic British vehicles and auctioning them off for charity. It ran for several seasons and did something important for Ant's career. It proved he could hold a television audience while also doing legitimate mechanical work, which is exactly the resume line that eventually caught the attention of the Wheeler Dealers producers when they needed a new co-host for the American iteration of the show. When Ant joined Wheeler Dealers for its American season starting around 2017, it was the biggest platform he had ever had, introducing him to a U.S. audience that had no idea who he was before that point. It was also, not coincidentally, the same period he met Christina, and the two of them quickly became one of the more visible couples in American reality television, blending their families and appearing together in a way that built a public narrative of a fresh start for both of them after their respective first marriages. So when that marriage collapsed in 2020, it was not simply a private heartbreak playing out behind closed doors. It was the unraveling of a very public story that fans had been following for years, happening at the same moment the show that made Ant famous in America was slipping away from him too: the cracked marriage. The problems in Ant and Christina's marriage did not suddenly appear when they announced the separation. Things had reportedly been difficult for a while, especially after Hudson was born in September 2019. They were trying to care for a newborn while also bringing together Ant's two older children and Christina's two older children from their previous marriages. That was a lot happening under one roof, and over time, the pressure seems to have taken a toll on their relationship. Christina was also open about how difficult things had become for her. In an Instagram post, she admitted that she never imagined she would go through 2 divorces or have children with 2 different fathers, and she talked about struggling with anxiety so often that it had almost become normal for her. She even mentioned moments when she would hide in her closet and cry. It was a very personal admission, and it showed that behind the happy photos and television appearances, Christina had been struggling too. All of this shows that Ant's struggles after the breakup did not simply come out of nowhere. Both Ant and Christina had been dealing with their own problems before the separation became public, and afterward, they handled the pain very differently. Christina spoke openly about her anxiety and what she was going through, while Ant kept much more to himself until his weight loss made fans realize something was wrong. But even after the divorce was finalized, their problems were far from over, because the next battle would be over their son, Hudson. The divorce may have been over on paper, but Ant and Christina were nowhere near finished with each other. And this time, the argument involved something far more important than their marriage. So how did their breakup turn into a 2-year custody fight over Hudson, with both sides making serious claims about the other? The custody fight. If the breakup alone had been the extent of it, Ant might have quietly rebuilt his life the way most people do after a divorce. Instead, the situation with Christina escalated into a custody battle over Hudson that stretched on for roughly 2 years and got uglier than either side seemed to want it to. Ant filed a petition seeking full custody, and according to the court filings themselves, he argued that Christina spent an average of only 9 full days a month with their son, and that she had previously put Hudson's health at risk. In a separate filing, he went further, claiming that Christina had already used Hudson in numerous paid social media promotions, and that he feared she was collecting footage of their son to use on one of her television shows without his knowledge or consent. Christina pushed back hard, telling reporters at the time that she was shocked to see Ant continuing to make what she called false allegations against her, and she later described the entire fight as deeply saddening, saying it should have been handled privately through mediation rather than aired out in court documents that entertainment outlets could obtain and publish. Christina was dealing with other problems at the same time. She later mentioned having a health scare during that period and described one particular Mother's Day as the worst she had ever experienced, with the custody battle, the health concern, and problems around moving homes all happening at once. She never explained exactly what the health issue was, but it was clear that the situation with Ant was only one part of a very difficult time in her life. Eventually, Christina decided to stop posting Hudson on social media altogether. She said she was mentally exhausted by what she described as false information and manipulation, and decided Hudson would stay off her social media until he was old enough to choose for himself whether he wanted to be shown publicly. Ant also faced questions about posting photos of Hudson, with some people accusing him of doing the same thing he had criticized Christina for. He defended himself in the comments and made it clear that he saw a difference between sharing normal family photos and using Hudson in paid content. By late 2022, Ant and Christina finally reached an agreement to share legal and physical custody, with a schedule covering holidays, vacations, and the rest of the year. By the end of the custody fight, Ant had already been through a divorce, a difficult exit from wheeler dealers, and a very public battle over his son. But his story did not end there. So what happened when Ant finally started rebuilding his personal life and career after one of the hardest periods he had ever faced? What came after the dark place? The interesting part of Ant's story is not just the fall. It is what he did once he climbed back out of it. Within roughly a year of the divorce being finalized, he had started dating Renee Zellweger, whom he met while filming his Discovery Plus series, Celebrity IOU Joyride, and the two were photographed together on a California beach by the summer of 2021, seemingly confirming rumors that had already been circulating about them for weeks. Meeting her was just one of those random timing things. Unlike the previous relationship, this one managed to avoid messy tabloid custody battles. Recent interviews show widespread public praise for her. A joke popped up on Instagram calling her a hall pass, followed by a more grounded comment describing her as the most humble person in the room. On paper, his career should have ended right there. public meltdowns usually come with a permanent pink slip in television, yet he somehow kept landing work. He bounced from Celebrity IOU, Joyride to Wheeler Dealers, Dream Car, and its inevitable spin-off, eventually anchoring Born Mechanic. That latest gig actually lets him build cars from scratch instead of just flipping cheap rust buckets for a quick margin. The entire structure was different. It stepped away from the usual reality TV formula of buying cheap junk and flipping it for a quick profit. Instead, the focus shifted to actual craft and manual labor. The whole thing makes it look like Ant used his forced 2020 break to figure out what he actually cared about making, rather than just grabbing the first microphone and paycheck thrown his way. Of course, viewers only managed to piecemeal the story together years later as random bits of information slowly leaked out through podcasts and press tours. Ant may have been moving forward, but fans were only beginning to realize how much had actually been happening behind the scenes during those final months on Wheeler Dealers. So once the full story started coming out, did fans see Ant's exit differently? How fans reacted? At first, most fans did not think there was much drama behind Ant leaving Wheeler Dealers. People were mainly sad to see him go and curious about whether Mark Priestley could replace him. But that changed when Ant started talking about his weight loss and later opened up to people about how badly the divorce had affected him. Fans began putting the timing together and realized he had been dealing with much more than a change of TV jobs. Suddenly, that cheerful Instagram post announcing his exit looked very different. Behind the positive message was someone trying to keep moving while a huge part of his personal life was falling apart. Public reaction to the custody battle split down the middle, mostly depending on which tabloid story people clicked first. Half the internet backed Ant, claiming a dad had every right to worry about a kid getting posted online for views, especially given how much of Christina's money comes from social media. The other half called him out as a hypocrite, pointing out that he posted pictures of the kid during the same period he complained about her doing it. Neither party came out looking good. The petty fight just dragged on, draining public sympathy for both sides until a joint custody deal finally shut everyone up in 2022. As of this year, Ant and Renee have been together for roughly 5 years, and he marked their most recent anniversary with an Instagram post calling her the best human he knows. In a recent interview with The Telegraph, he addressed the marriage question directly, saying he still believes in it, but that the two of them are not feeling pressure to put a label on things right now, all while affectionately referring to her as the Mrs. Renee has since made her home in Southern California near San Diego, specifically to be close to Ant and his youngest son, which is about as clear a signal of commitment as two people can send without a ring being involved. The custody setup with Christina, who now goes by Christina Hall after marrying real estate agent Joshua Hall, finally landed on a joint agreement that both sides have actually kept without any major internet meltdowns. Their kid Hudson, now around 6 years old, rarely pops up in public drama anymore. Both parents moved on to quieter lives that looked nothing like the chaos they were dealing with back in 2020. It turns out celebrity exes can actually stop fighting on the internet once lawyers charge enough money to make silence look attractive. So the Wheeler Dealers exit that fans read as a simple career move in November of that year actually sat at the center of one of the roughest personal stretches of Ant's adult life: a divorce, a documented dark place, a public weight loss he had to explain to strangers in his Instagram comments, and a custody fight that took 2 years to resolve. None of that shows up in the cheerful goodbye post he wrote at the time, which is probably exactly why it took years of separate interviews, court filings, and Instagram replies for the fuller picture to actually come together. Do you think the Wheeler Dealers exit would have hit fans differently if he had been upfront about what was really going on at the time? Or was he right to keep it separate? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.